Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by voiceover artists, we make your life sound more exciting than it is. Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Spasmodica, the biggest advancement in shoe technology since the Stone Age. It's like walking on clouds. Pick up a pair of Spasmodicas while supplies last. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is a film podcast by filmmakers, for filmmakers, about filmmakers. No, I've gone too far. But it's what we do, where we do all kinds of things. I'm like an actor, a writer, a full-time filmmaker. You're a full-time producer, and you've put on the director hat many times yourself, and you're a writer, and you're also a musician, as we covered with some depth last week. If you haven't listened to the once edition of The Pestle, you should go backwards in time and do that. But I want to touch on it again, because we do a lot of things. We're constantly, I honestly think of myself as a really lazy human being, and I throw that out every once in a while to people whenever we're talking about things. And some people are like, "No, I don't think you're lazy." I feel lazy, and I think it's just because maybe it's the standards that I have and the expectations that I have on my life, right? I want to be doing X, Y, Z. And so it doesn't matter that, we do this podcast every week on top of my regular work, and I have side projects and I'm writing and whatever. I still feel lazy because I have this vision of where I want to be. But even regardless if other people think I am or not, you are definitely not lazy. You, especially if the last month is any indication, because you just finished building your own studio in your backyard. And it's an incredible piece of technology that cavemen would certainly applaud and, guffaw, like the discovery of fire itself, Todd. What did you build, and why did you build it?
Oh, yeah. So this is our maiden voyage here in my new abode. So a couple of months ago, a friend of our family was going to come and live with us, told us that she's moving back here from New York, and she needed a place to stay. And so I said, okay, that's great. Well, we've been recording I have been recording in our spare bedroom, and which was going to be her bedroom. And I said, okay, well, where am I supposed to do my podcast? Where am I supposed to work? Because I work here too during the day. And I had been throwing around this idea of doing one of those kind of shed studio things. And, I looked into it like in ad nauseum, like in such detail. Can I afford this? And, is it worth it? Well, long story short, and I will make it very short, I sold some tracks that I had been working on. Don't shake your head. I sold some tracks and I made some money that I had been working on that I made in that room. And I talked to my wife and I said, what if I put all that money and a little bit more and into this room, and I build it myself? We have a space out in the backyard. We have this stupid HOA. I hate HOAs. Sorry I even have one. They're terrible for so many reasons. But anyway, not just personally, but racially. But so I got their approval. I talked to my neighbors, got their approval, and I started building this thing. And it turned into, from day one, like, Wes, you came out and you helped. My father-in-law helped, and he, thank God, he's built a house with his bare hands, so he knows how to do all this stuff. I knew nothing. And then after that first day, it really hit home, where I was like, oh, I have a frame. Now what? Everyone's gone. Oh, shit. And thankfully, you came back and helped me dig the ditch. Another buddy helped Scott helped several times as well. And then, and you helped me with the drywall, the roof, the ceiling drywall, which God, is the worst. Yeah. Drywall, gables, yeah. Drywall is the worst. But I knew nothing. And now I did the whole rest of it by myself. And it was like so eye-opening not only to how amazing builders are, but how creative they are. And how all of these like little things you think are no big deal, or you get annoyed at your, if your house isn't perfect or something, if you buy a house, but like it is incredible what human beings can do. Like I look at a skyscraper now and I'm even more baffled. Like I can't even get, I can't, it takes me all day to figure out angles for a roof that's 12.5 degrees. Imagine, these architects designing and then these builders building all these like
The
incredible
vision
structures.
that it takes for something you see years ahead around corners. Like that
Yes.
blows my mind.
Yeah, and these are also buildings that are having to account for things like air conditioning and air conditioning ducts. For me, I did a split unit, so I have just this thing hanging on the wall and then the unit outside. There's no ductwork. But you got to take that into account. You got to take plumbing into account and electrical. I did electrical in here.
And wind
obviously.
itself, like wind velocity, like the fact that
yes.
your building is standing in the middle of the environment.
Yes, and you got to factor in sway and anyway. So it was It was an incredible experience. It was a very eye-opening experience, and I'm so proud of this thing. I think I was talking to my buddies the other day. My old band and we have a thread that we always talk on, and I sent that video I sent to you, Wes, about with this finished room when it was empty, and I told him, I said, I think I'm most proud in my life of my kids, my marriage, I even forgot the other thing. My kids, my marriage, and this room. Oh, my album and this room, in that order. Like it's right there. It's like on one hand. Because I just couldn't believe after that first day, I thought I was done. I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And now I'm sitting in here for the first time. This is the first thing I've done in this room right now.
Ooh.
I haven't done anything. Haven't recorded or haven't done like any work, nothing. Turned it on and this is it. And it's pretty damn awesome. So thanks for bearing with me when I told that story.
That's
so
really
anybody,
cool.
I'm just saying, if you can do anything, guys. If I can build a room with power and it actually sounds really excellent in here.
Yeah.
I mean, I built all the sound panels. I mean, I don't know if you can, what do we have here? I don't know if you can even see, oops, here, where is this? I don't know if you can see, where is it? Okay. I don't know if you can see that. Oh yeah. That's my cloud.
Oh man.
So these things in the corners, those are bass traps, and then if I had to make them angled so they'd sit in the corner, and then this is not angled; it's just straight like a box. But I made two of them, put them together, and made them double thick, and I hung them above me.
So with the bass traps, whenever you catch one, if it's too little, do you throw it back?
No, you keep that shit.
You keep
and
that
you eat
bass,
it.
okay.
You keep that shit. But yeah, it is crazy, but I'm so glad it's done, and I'm really proud of it. So,
Dude, it looks amazing. I'm
thanks,
so
brother.
proud of you.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah, and, I mean, it was an inch. Well, it was half an
Dude,
inch.
but that's the thing. Like, seriously, having people like you to say, dude, this is amazing, when it was a pile of crap just sitting there doing nothing. And I mean, the idea, it's like running a marathon and you're on mile 3 and you want to quit. On mile 3. I had no idea how I was going to finish it. And also I want to give props to my wife, my wonderful, amazing wife, who sat quietly, said nothing. I mean, she didn't help either. Let's be clear. It was just fine. I never asked her. But she did help in that she allowed me to crack out on this. And by crack out, I mean, we've talked about it. I can't do more than one thing at once. I have to focus until something is done. And this thing took a month to build. And she never complained one time. Not once. It was crazy. It was like so supportive. So I want to thank her too. So Scott, Caleb, Wes, Jenny, Ronnie, my father-in-law, shoot, who am I forgetting? I don't know. Yeah.
But I get
And
it,
then
man.
everybody,
I was
yeah, it's
thinking
awesome.
earlier, not even that long ago, I was thinking about Izzy, just all the listeners that we have. I mean, we have a handful that, talk to us and, drop a comment or an email. And I was just reflecting on, how great it is having people like that, having people like Izzy and Junie Marie and, just our buddy Joe, like so many people that Joseph, even on Facebook, he'll drop us, a thing or two. But having even just that, gives you so much wind for your second breath. And whenever I think about you out there, like building this thing by yourself, like, yeah, even me showing up for, a few hours, or Scott, or, Caleb, like, I'm sure just having people there around just gives you that much extra energy. And so it's important, man, whenever you see someone trying to do something, like go help or give a word of encouragement, something. Like, you'll be surprised the people that you appreciate and what that honest, attention can really do for somebody.
Dude, 100%. And that's why I said, even if you just came over for a couple hours and helped me dig, or just came over for a couple hours and like sat with me and did nothing, just be there was like,
Yeah.
I mean,
You're out there in the desert by yourself. Here's a glass of water.
Yes, that's a perfect way to say it. Yes, here's a glass of water in the desert. It was so necessary and perfect timing and needed. And it wasn't even about the actual manual labor, So,
Yeah.
anyway.
Wow. Well, props, my man.
Thanks, brother.
That really is a feat. Like, I've seen my dad growing up build things like that. And I mean, I very much was the person putting their finger on the shoelace while you tied your shoes. Like, I was just doing little as possible and just blown away. And so I know, or at least I have some visual understanding of the work you did, bro. Props.
Thanks,
big props. Man. Yeah.
Thank you, dude. Well, now we have a space.
Yeah. Freaking awesome.
When this damn pandemic is over too, we can, like, record as much as possible, for sure.
So, speaking of doing the most with the least resources possible, what are we covering today?
Today we are covering Following, which was Christopher Nolan's debut film. So if you haven't watched it, pause this episode, go watch it. I don't know, where can people find it? I don't know if it's like...
I think if you subscribe to Criterion, it's on there. You can stream it there.
Okay.
It pops up periodically here and there. It's not a very well-known film, and so you got to go out of your way to find it. But if you're a film fanatic, as we are, where there's film finds a way.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So make sure to pause this episode, go watch it, because there's going to be spoilers everywhere.
For sure. We'll touch on a few things. We'll talk about some of the cinematography, shooting on 16 millimeter film. We'll also touch on writing and editing. In this film, it felt like they were very closely connected, seeing as they were written and edited by the same man, as well as shot by the same man. And we'll touch on like adding intrigue to a simple story. We'll also touch on like locations on a small budget. I felt like there's a lot to be said about this film, and that's probably where it even starts. But yeah, we'll look through some of the locations that he used and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a synopsis of the film: a young writer who follows strangers for material meets a thief who takes him under his wing. Written and directed by Christopher Nolan, cinematography by Christopher Nolan, starring Jeremy Theobald as Bill, Alex Haw as Cobb, Lucy Russell as the blonde, and John Nolan as the policeman.
Envelope, photos with a form, cards, notes. It's a sort of unconscious collection. A display.
What do you mean, display?
Well, display. Each thing tells something very intimate about the people. We're very privileged to see it. It's very rare.
Hey, what the hell did you do that for?
It's like a diary. They hide it, but actually they want someone to see it. That's what I do. Conceal and display, flip sides of the same coin. This way they know that someone's seen it. That's what it's all about. Interrupting someone's life, making them see all the things that they took for granted. Like when they go back and buy all this stuff from the shelves of the insurance money, they'll have to think for the first time in a long time why they wanted all this stuff, what it's for. You take it away, you show them what they had. Saucy, eh? Found these in the last flat. I think I'll just give them something to chat about.
Why would you want to do that?
Should find them in his trousers and ask him what he's been doing.
Yeah, but why would you want to fuck up their relationship?
Don't you listen. You take it away and show them what they have.
So, first, before we get going, you won't be able to see this, Todd, because you're on Skype. But I'm going to go full following here by taking down the saturation on the video, punching up the brightness. Oh, this is following. All right. So now that I'm done being completely cheesy, and yes, it's going to stay this way for almost the entire episode. And so,
Okay.
What was this the first time? I assume you've seen it. I assume maybe you've even heard of it before, or were you even aware of this thing?
No, I'd never heard of it before, never seen it before. Yeah, no, but no.
Completely new. What?
Yeah.
How did it strike you? Like, what was I don't even know what to call it. Like, what was the experience of watching this thing? Because this is made in 1998 on a budget of $6,000 by one of the most well-known filmmakers working today. And this is him just trying to make a name. Like, let me just freaking finally make a movie that it barely at like 70 minutes qualifies as a movie.
As a movie.
Yeah.
So what it felt like to me was listening to Pablo Honey for the first time. Radiohead's first record. What it felt like to me was this is the beginning of something. This is what potential looks like. And the potential, and one of the brilliant things about it for me was that he took away things that you could critique a seasoned filmmaker for. He took away color. You can't critique black and white. It just is, right? You can't say, like, okay. And the only way I can compare it is, or a good way to compare it is music. In music, it's very easy to tell if something is cheap, if a mix is cheap, right? If a song is cheap and made cheaply because of either the vocal or the snare. Those are the two things. The two most important things if you want to sound professional, have a good sounding snare that sits well in the mix and a good vocal. That's it. Now, if you make a piece of music that doesn't have either of those things, you could make it in a bedroom, you could make it in a closet, you could make it in a high-end $1 million studio, and it will all sound probably very similar. So what does he do? He takes away color. So you can't look at it and say this looks cheap because the color is off or is different here than there or whatever. He didn't have money for a colorist probably, and maybe he could have done it himself, and there was probably some other motivation to doing it black and white, and you probably know it or whatever. But for me, it was like, okay, what are the things that are gonna scream first film, scream novice, or that this was done on a budget? And that's definitely one of them, right? The other thing was editing, but he did that himself. So he like, did it all the way he wanted it done. And he's brilliant. And he made it short, just long enough to be a film. so it didn't drag on for too long. So you couldn't say, "Oh, this was a great film," but he could have cut 30 minutes off of it. Well, not really. Then it wouldn't be a film. Then it'd be a short. And then and there weren't that many characters. Right? We didn't even meet Mr. Bald, really. I mean, we kind of did when he like killed that guy in her apartment in her apartment. But
even that was
that's
told
it.
in flashback.
Yeah, exactly. Like, really, it was about three people. It was about, I forget his name.
Bill, Cobb, and the blonde.
Bill, Cobb, and the blonde. That's it. The policeman was there too, but which was his dad.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah.
So cool. And I don't know if you noticed, but in the credits, his brother was the grip.
I did. I was
Jonathan
waiting. I was
was a
like,
grip.
where is he going to be in here?
Where is he? He's a grip. Jonathan Nolan was a grip on this. So badass. So
great.
badass. Anyway, so, okay. What we have is we have a dude who just wants to make a film. He has a couple grand. He can't spend money on a colorist. He probably knows he's not a very good colorist. He's an editor and a cinematographer and a director. You can't be the best at everything, right? So take color away, fine. Make the story about three people so we don't have a lot of shitty actors in this movie. We only have three pretty damn good actors. I mean, the blonde, I don't know, she was okay, but I enjoyed Cobb, but I really enjoyed Bill. I thought Bill was fantastic in this film. The editing and the cinematography were great. I never felt like I was taken out of it. I felt like it kept moving all the time. There was holds when it needed to hold. There was cuts when it needed to cut. The music was 9. There was like barely any. There was one piece of music that just kept coming back. It was like this
Yeah, this little
kind of
techno,
yeah, which he probably did, by himself with a Casio keyboard or something in his apartment. So that's the way I felt. I felt like I was watching the beginning of greatness, who knew that it's all about story, and it's all about not tricking, but it's all about giving you a payoff in the end. You think you know where the story is going, and then you find out it was going somewhere else the whole time. So that when you look back at it, his play with time, you look back on your experience of that film and you think, oh, it was telling me that the whole time, but I just didn't see it until now. And now if I go back and watch it again, I'm like, oh yeah, look out for that, dude. Look out for that, So what was his film after this?
Memento.
His next Memento. Holy crap, dude.
Yeah.
Yes. And what was Radiohead's second record?
Okay. No, was it? Was it okay?
Okay, Computer.
Holy crap. Damn.
Or no, it was the Bends. It was the Bends.
Oh, it was the
I'm so
Bends,
sorry.
okay.
It was the Bends. I'm so sorry. So Pablo Honey and then the Bends. Oh my God, one of the most seminal rock albums of all time. And then Okay Computer. And then like all these unbelievable, Memento, and then whatever else. I don't even know what's next after that, but it just felt like the beginning of some greatness, and mostly because of the story. I felt like the story was basic enough, but intriguing enough, and the writing was smart enough. Like having Cobb be so smart about human beings, and it's really a story about human beings, and that was a great clip you picked of take it away so that they see what they had.
Because even at the end, you could still make the case that even though he was hired to do a job, in his worldview, Cobb's worldview, he was giving something to Bill by taking away everything that he had in his life. And that plays right into that whole ideology of the way he sees the world.
Right, because Bill was so, he was like he was a writer, but he was just like, he was a loser. Yeah. Let's be clear. Like he had nothing in his life. He had no goal. He had no drive. Yes, he was a writer, but what was he writing? A piece on people. For what? For who? For himself, right?
Which even the story, I feel like, could be reflective of Christopher Nolan himself, right? You have...
Oh, good point.
Right, a writer who's just trying to make something, and he can't figure out what to make, and he maybe doesn't have the resources, maybe he doesn't have the grand ideas, And so he's like, okay, well, forget it. I'll just make a movie about a writer who has no ideas. And in order to generate ideas, he starts following people around. And then, it unfolds from there, and I'll get into some of the location stuff in a bit. But yeah, I think that's really good points. I think with the black and white, very strong, like reducing the number of ways the points of failure. Like that's a really good angle and a really smart way to think about it. And I hadn't really considered it that way. And I'm watching it right now, and it's
Are you distracted by the film right now?
Yeah, well, there was just a scene, and it's at the 36-minute mark when the blonde is walking around, and you could see at the top of the screen there's a little overlap between this frame and the frame above us. And so there's just like at the very top, this very small sliver that shows you the frame above. And so it's very, I don't know, it's adorable. There's a hair in the gate right now at the bottom of the frame, and right around the 38-minute mark. And so I'm just looking at these details, and it's very endearing, and for me, it gives me like hope. Like, okay,
yeah,
you don't got to be perfect, because I love your point. Reduce the points of failure, and now you can't be judged on color. You can't be judged on, like, even some of those things get lost, like the hair in the gate. I've seen this movie now over the last 48 hours, 2 or 3 times. And that's the first time I've noticed that particular hair in the gate. And that's a big one. But I didn't notice it, because the story is interesting enough. And
can you clarify what that means?
Yes.
Like what?
So a hair in the gate is, it's kind of a catch-all term for, there might be something whenever you're shooting film. You load film into what's called a magazine. It's a canister that holds the film that you plug into your film camera, and then at the front of the edge of the magazine is where the film gets exposed to air. Now, whenever it's plugged into the film camera, that's running beneath the lens, and that's where the light hits the lens, and the lens projects it onto the film, and the film is running very, very fast, usually at 24 frames per second. If you're shooting normal film style. And so what can happen though, and that's called the gate, right there where the film is exposed and into the air beneath the lens, that's called the gate. And what can happen is, because we live in a filthy world filled with molecules and particles of things,
And viruses
and hair. And so what can happen is a number of things. One, literally, hair can actually get into, if you're switching out lenses, like you pull the lens out, now the gate is exposed to the open elements. And so what you'll normally do is take some compressed air or an air blower, and just blow air in there to swoosh out anything that might be living in there. And then you put on the next lens, and maybe you do this as well whenever you're swapping the magazine. You also got to do it when you load and unload the film, like, because the hair or the dirt molecules can all hitch a ride onto the film as it's whooshing out of the one side of the magazine, getting exposed and being uptaken on the other side of the magazine. And so, but what normally it is, it's not usually hair. Usually it's going to be dirt, or more specifically, it'll be little broken pieces of the film itself. It's pretty fragile. Kodak does an incredible job of absolutely minimizing anything that might be in the, they go through incredibly great lengths to make sure there's no dirt whenever they spool it onto on the spool and they, send it to you. And so normally it's going to be you, but it can still happen. Maybe you load the film a little tightly. And so as it's, rolling over these rollers, it can just chip off a little bit. Or maybe it's a little too loose and it chips off, and it's sticking out a little bit as it's rolling over the gate. And so there's all kinds of things that can go wrong. And so you have to constantly be checking, because it's one of those things you won't really know until the film has been exposed and you're looking at it, sometimes a week later after your shoot. And so it's something.
So you recently did a shoot with film, right?
I did.
And you got scared, like something happened and you got scared, and then what happened?
A number of things happened. So my buddy Juwan has a clothing label called Azlani that's representative of his time in Austin and Los Angeles and New York is where he now resides. And he's also a film professional. He's got 2 Emmys. I don't know if we've ever talked about him on the air, but great guy. We used to be roommates, whatever. And so I was wanting to do something for somebody. I feel like I never have anybody who just comes in out of left field and says, hey, Wes, can I just produce a film for you? Or, hey, Wes, can I do whatever for you? So I was thinking about shooting something for me, and I was having a down moment, and one of my buddies on our big thread, the text thread, the cookie duster thread, as we call it, comes up and he's like, yo, Wes, why don't you just do something for Juwan? I was like, yeah, you know what, man, I'm going to do that. I'm going to hit him up. And so I offered like, hey, if you send me some wardrobe, I'll shoot a fashion video for you. And so I had, 5 cans of film that I've been holding on for the last 6 years. I bought my Super 16 camera 6 years ago. I've only shot a couple projects on it. And whenever I bought it, the guy who sold it to me threw in 5 cans of film. And so I've been holding on to this film for ages now.
And this guy has been trying to get it back too, right?
Yeah, he's been kind of a jerk. I was going to call him a D word, but just because he keeps asking and then he doesn't respond to me whenever I have a question. And so it's one of these things where he's like, hey, man, I was just thinking about my old camera. You ever think about selling that? I sure wouldn't mind buying it back. I regret selling it. And I'm like, no, man, I appreciate it. If I ever do think about selling it, you'll be the first to know, I promise. But, while we're talking, I'd really love to upgrade the video tap. Like right now it's old SD, black and white. It's just kind of garbage. Do you know where I can, do you have any ideas who I could source that out to? And then just crickets. And then 6 months later, hey man, I was just thinking about that camera.
Oh God.
And we repeated that a few times, and now he's going into my spam filter. I'm just like, you know what? F off. You're just a self-serving prick at this point. And now if I do sell it, I'm going to literally sell it to someone else and then send him the receipt. I wouldn't really do that because I'm never selling this camera.
Shit. No,
but
do it.
It's a funny line. But it's like, don't ask something for someone and then like, don't.
Right.
Yeah, that's just kind of a jerk mode. Anyway, and so I've been holding on to these 5 cans of film for 6 years. And here's the thing. They haven't been kept well. I have stored these for the first, I don't know, let's say 3 years. I stored it in my fridge, which is where it should be. And then I moved out. I roomed with you for a little over a year. And in that time, for about 6 months, we kept it in the attic, which in Texas heat, not good. Really not good. And I was so stressed because I just didn't have much space in my room. And I was finally like, I need to do something. And so I pulled it into my bedroom at least for the remaining, 6-9 months. And so then I moved into my new place and I was like, why would now I have a roommate and we just have no fridge space to put it in there. And I was like, I kind of already crapped all over this film. I'm not going to like go out of my way to suddenly treat it good now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just been sitting on my shelf in my bedroom. And so all that to say, if you don't treat your film well, if it's been exposed to poor elements like heat, there can be this element that's called fogging, where the film kind of thickens and can create some unpleasant effects to the film. It's not like this cool hipster look. It's like it reduces contrast, and you're just not going to get the really nice, crisp, clear film footage that you want. And in order to combat against that, what you can do is overexpose the film, and then whenever you get it, let's say, and this is going to get technical. I don't think I can get into all the nitty gritty, but what the general idea is, if you overexpose it, put too much light on it, then whenever you have the processing lab process it, you say, don't process it for quite as long. And that helps to reduce the fogging effect by just putting more light on it and having it spend less time in development. That's supposed to help mitigate some of that. And so anyway, that was my plan. I'm going to overexpose this by over a stop, which is a good amount of light, enough, whatever. And so imagine, whatever. So we get out on set, we're shooting. I have 3 rolls and I have 3 magazines. I shoot, the first magazine. We go through my shot list, and the day is already kind of off to a rough start because the clouds have kind of suddenly rolled over. I like shooting outside in hard daylight. I really like hard lighting in my daytime shoots, so I can shoot into the sun. I can get these nice hard lights, shadows. And so I really like using that style for this type of shoot, especially for fashion. And so I'm out there, and it's looking like it's going to do what Texas does, which is hard daylight. But the problem is we're also in November. And so literally within 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes, the sun goes from a couple clouds to completely overcast. There's not a splotch of sky in the sky. Like, it's all cloud. It's absolutely atrocious. And so I'm like, great. This is off to a good start. So we start working through my shot list. And then on top of that, we're shooting at a skate park. And there's way more people than should be out there at 8 a.m. on a Sunday. And so I'm like, I've lost my set. I've lost my sky. Hey guys, we're going to have a great day today. And then to top it off, we start going through my shot list, and we finished a full 11 minutes of film. It's 400 feet. I have 3 rolls that I'm shooting today. And I go to switch out magazines, and I realized I had 3 stops of ND filter intentionally. I had put 3 stops of ND filter on the front of my camera to help cut down sunlight, because it's still really, really bright out there, and I'm shooting on pretty sensitive film. And even though I'm trying to overexpose it, there's still too much light. So, you prep for that, and I was, whatever, I rented my filters. But what I didn't do is I didn't factor in the light meter. I didn't add to my light meter to factor in 3 stops of ND filter. And so now what was supposed to be overexposed is now underexposed by at least 2 stops. And so I'm just all kinds of headache. And then luckily though, I have 2 more rolls, and we shoot those and everything goes fine, whatever.
Did you change the filtering or
yes,
you stopped
for
up? Okay.
Yeah, for the second and third rolls, I was able to adjust in my light meter to account for the underexposed, the extra 3 stops of ND filter. And so get the film back, very nervous. I'm nervous the entire time for so many reasons now. Like, I've burned an entire roll of film because I screwed up the exposure. And then on top of that, I don't know if the film's any good anyway. It's just I didn't run a test. I could have just rolled like 50 feet of film and sent it to Kodak to see if this is any good. But I don't know. Chalk that up to the laziness thing I was talking about earlier. I just didn't want to, I guess, go through that process. And so it's one of those things you think about well after the fact. It's like, why didn't I do this? As they're exposing, 1,200 feet of film, I'm like, I could have done this with 50.
Yeah.
And so I get the film back, hyper nervous, because now I've spent, hundreds on my models. I've spent hundreds more on film processing and scanning and shipping. And I look at the film, and it's amazing, like, how much film can take a beating. Like, I put this thing through hell, and it still looks incredible. Even the film that first roll, there's still going to be some usable stuff. And what's really amazing about that is that first roll had other issues with it. Like, I think there's something wrong with my magazine. There's some jittering going on in the gate. And so the film isn't always stable. There's some weird lighting aberrations that's happening, some streaking that's happening. But I mean, it's a fashion video. Some of that can play. I shot in slow motion, which helps kind of negate some of the jitteriness. And then, some weird lighting effects. Hey, whatever, it's fashion. Like, if I pull a couple shots in, and then on top of that, I have to push the exposure by 3 stops just to get the exposure right. I'm putting this film through the freaking ringer. And it's still doing well, man. If you ever want to shoot film, it's so forgiving. I promise you you can try to mess it up and you'll probably still get something out of it. Like, you got to go out of your way to really ruin it. And if you just do the bare minimum, you'll get something out of it, I promise. So don't be afraid to shoot film is, I guess, the lesson for that. But watching, and on top of that, I still had some hair in the gate issues, like very small. Like, if it wasn't enough, I'm just piling on all my bullshit. But there's, right on the fringes of the frame, there's a little bit of a hair in the gate, a little dirt accumulation on the bottom right, which is fine. I'm not going to go out of my way to remove it. I might do a light pass of some dirt removal software just to see what it does, but I'm not going to get hung up on it for sure. But watching Christopher Nolan's film, sorry for the 75-minute detour.
I feel you.
I really enjoy it. Yeah, you do. And it's endearing, and I identify with it because you can't account for everything, especially whenever you're doing it all yourself. And he was. Like, he had help. He had a grip. He had his baby bro helping, gripping, and people lending a hand when he could. And it's funny because he strung out like 3 minutes worth of credits when it could have been easily like a 25-second roll.
Oh, yeah. It was so long. Oh, my gosh. Like, he really wants you to read every word.
Every word, and probably extending it just so that it doesn't look like, oh, it's a 70-minute film in order to make the bare, minimum. Like, we'll make it 71 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, credits. And so it's I love that kind of thing. And he shot on black and white. So right now to buy, not even process and scan one roll of film, just to buy the film itself, it's about $200. And at the time, and right now, shooting black and white is cheaper. So he could shave a few bucks shooting black and white. And so right now, to buy black and white film for 16 instead of, $197, it's like $177. So you save $20 per roll, which adds up. If you only have $6,000, that's precious. Every single dollar you can save is precious. Not to mention processing, scanning. Maybe it was a little cheaper in 98 because of the volume that they could do. Maybe he could go in and buy what's called short ends. If I didn't roll out every single roll, like if you're on a major production and you're shooting 5, 6, 7-minute scenes, then you might roll, 6, 7 minutes and then have 4 minutes left over. You're not going to save that 4 minutes. Like, you're a production that's moving, you're popping. And so you'll do what's called a short end, where maybe you'll sell it back to Kodak or to some studio, some rental place, and they'll give you whatever, $20 back, and production can use that money, right? And so that rental house will take that $20 worth of film and now sell it for $25. So Nolan can go in and buy super cheap black and white short ends. I don't know that he did this, but this is what I would do if I was in a pinch with $6,000 to make a 70-minute film. And then now I have something, right? Now I can shoot for a handful of minutes on 16. I don't know what he shot this on. I could probably pull it up here in 5 seconds. And if you ever go on IMDb, you can go into what's called the tech specs, the technical specs of the film, and find out, what it was shot on, aspect ratio, all kinds of things. So he shot this on an Reflex 16BL. Like, this is a pretty classic old school 16 millimeter camera. Oh wow, he got it developed in photochem? Bro, you did not spare any expense. I can't imagine that's the case. That can't be right. There's no way he sprung for photochem out in LA. That's insanity. And so,
is that like an expensive developing company?
Yeah, that's the spot. I bet he did that whenever after he did Memento and was looking at getting this produced. There's no way his first run, when he submitted this to festivals, he did this through photochem. Zero chance. I just do not believe that for a second. But maybe. I mean, he's also, hey, this is a film purist, so maybe he was like, I'm going to spring for the extra $3,000, or maybe photochem hooked him up. I don't know. But I have a hard time believing that. I don't think I saw photochem in the credits. I was looking, not for them specifically, but I read through all the credits. I don't remember seeing them. Mm-hmm. So I would be surprised. Anyway. And so shooting black and white, can save money, for one, on a very inexpensive production already, but then also it plays into the style of the film itself. As you hinted, you have a really high contrast. And that high contrast black and white style is very noir, and this is a noir film. And if you don't know what noir is, I don't blame you. It's kind of a hard thing to always define to me in my mind whenever I'm thinking, is this a noir film? For one, the cinematography kind of plays into it a little bit, but it's a stylish crime drama. Usually we recognize it as these hard-boiled detective stories, but that's not critical to the genre. I think just having more of these sketchy characters with hard-to-read motives, there's usually some kind of thriller aspect. Thrillers are very big on plot twists and lies, usually that surround something about a lie. There's some core concept of truth and trying to perceive reality that is at the heart of thrillers. And so truth, lies, character, motivations, all key to noir and thrillers, which this is what that is. And cinematography wise, like, he did a lot of simple setups, a lot of 1 light and 2 light setups, hot light. And this is kind of why if you're watching the YouTube version, why I lit the scene the way I did now. I usually go for a little more softer light. But right now it's very hard lighting. And if you watch during that transition, when I switched from the color to this high contrast black and white, you can see I did very, very little. And there's this very easy, quick punch that, I achieved with just a minimum. And so his lighting setups are very much in this style. Like, just let me throw up 1 or 2 lights, especially in those barroom scenes. That's the classic noir space to be in, is in some kind of club or bar. It's not hard, and it plays right into the style. And to Todd's point, like, do the minimum, reduce every possible point of failure for the audience. And that way we can just, all we have left to think about is the story. And staying on cinematography a hair in the gate longer, he did a lot. I'm a cornball today. He did a lot of long lenses at the start, right? Across the street, a lot of these kind of easy panning motions, and it's perfect. It reflects him following. And then after getting involved, we switch to these up close things. And so there's a shift in the story, there's also a shift in the lenses and the angles, going from these longer perspectives to these wider lenses, being more close after being approached by the subject that he was following. And so there's a very subtle, quick, that happens, maybe 12 minutes into the story, that shift happens. And even in the first 5 minutes, there's a lot going on before we even get started with the story. And so I also want to commend him as someone, he was and this probably in the same exact degree that I'm a cinematographer, a DP. He was a cinematographer at that point in his career. And he does a great job of directing the camera, where he sets up a scene and he lets the characters enter and exit the frame as the scene opens or closes or establishes a new setting. Like if they're walking through the apartment, he doesn't just walk with them throughout the entire apartment. He allows them to enter a room and exit the room and enter a new room. Like, he does a really strong job of directing the camera that a lot of first-time filmmakers, if they had to go it by themselves, just wouldn't pick up on. And I have a lot of love for that. He does a great job of using handheld, not a ton on tripod or rails, or dolly, I should say. At the end, as the perspective shifts, as the story punchline comes into view, there's a dolly shot there. I don't know that there's any other dolly shots in the entire movie. I want to say that's probably it. Maybe he hid 1 or 2 in there that I didn't pick up on, or at least draw attention to. But there, it's very obvious. The rest is handheld. And even whenever we're not moving the actors around, he does a great job of adding a lot of subtle movement to keep the camera alive, even though they're still. And so you never get the sense that, oh, we're on sticks. Instead, he's adding just very subtle. I mean, maybe the RE Flex was light enough where he didn't have to add it. I've never used the 16BL, so I'm not familiar with the oddities of running that particular camera. I know on my Super 16, that thing is heavy enough to where when I put it on my shoulder, if I want it to stay still, it'll stay pretty still, because it's probably, I don't know, 35 pounds or so with the matte box and with the lens.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it gets up there. But the nice thing, so I have an Aten or an Aton or Auton. There's like, it's French. So I think you pronounce it however the F you want.
Aton.
Aton. Xterra.
Sorry for
No,
all my
it's-
French friends.
No, they're snooty. They can handle it.
Yeah.
And so they the Aten Xterra was like the last line of Super 16 cameras made by Aten for sure. But it has what they call the cat on the shoulder design, so that it hangs out on your shoulder so well that I shot on this camera for a full 10 or 12 hours about a year and a half ago, and I never felt it. I could have gone another 10, 12 hours. Like, I never felt it. By contrast, I shot an RE. It wasn't the 16BL. It was the SR3. And I shot that handheld on my shoulder for like 5 minutes. I was done. That thing was unwieldy. It was a beast. I literally couldn't handle it. And so it was just a massive contrast just based on the camera build and the layout of the form of the camera. And so hats off to Aten. Not that they're listening. I think they do sound stuff now. I don't know what they do. So yeah, props to Nolan, doing a lot by himself. From what I understand, and I'll see if I can dig up some articles and put it in the show notes, he shot this film over the course of a year, is what I remember hearing him describe. I watched this movie after discovering Memento. I was like, it blew my mind. Memento did. And I went and was like, I need to find what else this guy has done. And so I dug this up, and I think maybe whenever I found Netflix DVD rentals, I had them ship it to me. Netflix is great. If you ever are trying to find obscure stuff and you don't want to buy it, just get their DVD rental, do a whatever $5 a month thing, and get their obscure DVDs if you still have a way to play it. And so most people probably don't. And so I dug into it, and I was like, he shot this thing over the course of a year. He would rehearse during the week, probably block it out, go shoot it on the weekend with his cast, get it processed and review it, see, do I need to reshoot it? Do I need to redo anything? And then, spend his week editing, rehearsing, and then working in order to pay for the film stock and the whole process, right? And so it was a labor of love for sure, and one that paid off. And so this, to me, even though there's some bumps and bruises in this thing, it's for me like a really incredible work of art and labor of love. For writing and editing, fast start, man. They get off really quick. This is a really good rule of thumb for most videos, no matter what you're making. This is probably a good rule of thumb. There's always going to be a reason to break it, but open fast, open with a lot, like catch our interest. He opens with this montage of gloves, a box opening, pictures, jewelry, items being touched. And we kind of get the impression that, is this a robbery? What is going on? We don't really piece together what's happening, but that's kind of the point. It's like he wants us to ask the question of, what did I just see? Because it's pretty quick. Then we immediately cut to this VO and intercutting with his interview, right? We see a shot of him inside the Dunkin' Donuts, and then he's on the streets walking around as we hear him talking about describing his life to someone. And we're intercutting that with him typing on a typewriter, which is quaint AF in 2020. And so we, of course, later find out the punchline that he's not like talking to a therapist or his dad or someone. He's being interviewed by a detective in a police station. And so it's, withheld from us what this all is until the end. And I think, generally speaking, he does a great job of advancing plot and story instead of, and not needlessly retreading obvious ground. This is something that would be kind of hard to do if you're a first-time writer, as you're trying to fill up, for him, 70 pages, but most of us 90. Like 90 is kind of the minimum runtime you want out of a movie. And not that every movie still does that, but generally speaking, 90 is your minimum, especially for something that gets released in a theater. And so you get tempted to just put in filler, and he doesn't. He steps away from that pretty well. Like and even some obvious parts that would be a trap for new writers at the beginning, right? Whenever the Cobb confronts him in the cafe, he says, oh, you're a writer. And he has that hesitation. No. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're a writer. And he's like, why do you say that? What makes you think I'm a writer? He doesn't say because you hesitated. That's kind of the obvious thing we as the audience, start to fill in. Yeah, because you have a tell. You gave it away. You paused. Instead, he adds new analysis as clever exposition, right? He starts going into, oh, well, yeah, you're aimless, you're whatever, you're a vagabond, you're walking around, finding other people more interesting than your own life, or whatever it is he says. And it's just perfect exposition in the form of this kind of Sherlockian analysis. And he's being kind of undressed right before you. So that was a really great opportunity to advance the story instead of turning it into this really crappy back and forth of, well, you hesitated. No, I didn't. And that's not interesting.
Right.
Take the audience somewhere they are not already thinking. The other thing that is in the editing that's part of the writing is kind of the frequent cuts out of sequence, right? It adds all these questions and tension, because in that first 5 minutes we see so much. We see him, in his goatee and his long hair. We also see him in a suit, cleaned up, and then we also see him, banged up and bruised. And so and then throughout the film, we start teasing those moments again. Okay, now we have a way to kind of orient ourselves. Oh, he's cleaned up and he's in the suit. Oh, now he's beat up. Okay, now he has his goatee again. I understand. And intuitively we understand that we're seeing these things out of sequence. That is a pro freaking move, man, because he never says it. He never makes it hit you over the head obvious. Pardon the pun. And so that would be something that he really trusted his filmmaker instincts. And I just cannot tell you how impressive that is as a first-time filmmaker. We're looking at Nolan knowing what we know about him now. But if you're watching this movie for the first time, even, after seeing one or two films and having to recognize this guy did this out of nothing, he just trusted his storytelling instincts. That's really, really damn impressive. And in a similar sense, the editing has some really strong edits in there from the standpoint of there's these frequent cuts to black to signal a passage of time or a transition. That's a pro move too. It's very, invocative to just say, oh, maybe I'll do a fade, a slow fade, or maybe I'll do another establishing shot, or maybe I'll add a voiceover here. Once you start using voiceover, it's super tempting to keep going back to it, and he doesn't. He withholds voiceover, and that's such a strong power move. Instead, he recognized the genre that he's making is a noir and it's a thriller. These hard cuts to black are all that I need to sell this transition. And so understanding your genre that you're working in is paramount to helping your audience along and telling your story. The other thing that I really like is at the very end, again, another incredibly polished move, is the intercutting of the murder reveal with the police interview. He's now revealing the twist in a very, climactic way. This is raising the hackles as we're discovering the real motivation and who was the real prowler this entire time was Cobb. And the blonde is not as in on it as she thinks she is. There was a whole ulterior motive all along. And that's done in a very polished, professional way. And, he does a great job of using, kind of, I don't know a better way to put this, but a different Hitchcock rule than we usually talk about, which is indicate instead of show. Like there's the scene, right, where the hammer is being blown on this guy's hand. We're breaking his fingers and we're hearing him yell. And then we kill him, right? He flips the hammer over and he hits him with the nail puller, the claw. And the temptation would be to show the violence, and instead we show the reactions to everyone experience the violence, and we have the cut in audio. So there's this very simple, easy way to sell the violence without having to show it. And that, flashbacks of Psycho, if you will. It's very well done, very well executed, and just plays perfectly into the genre that he's making, to have maximum impact on the audience. And I think that those are the things, and we'll get into locations here briefly. Those are the things that was able to get him Memento. A studio exec was able to look at his work and following and say, holy crap, this guy knows how to make a movie. He knows how to write it. He knows how to have a payoff. Let's see what he can do with a budget. And those are all those things put together, right? The knowing how to direct the camera, knowing how to edit your work in a way that is going to add to the story. The reality is, this story, the plot, it isn't helped at all. It isn't driven by the sequence of events, like in the sense of taking things out of sequence and editing it in this way does not advance the plot whatsoever. Instead, it adds intrigue and interest to the viewer. And that is what, allows us to appreciate the finale, the twist, because we start building all these questions. And he's just got us hanging on, even though those details are fairly meaningless in the grand scope of, if you were to watch this in perfect sequence, none of that is really affected or impacted by
It might just be more boring.
Yeah, that's it. That's all. And so brilliant. And so a producer looking at this film, he's like, oh, I got to see what else this guy has in the tank. Because if you give this guy, let's say $9 million, maybe he can make something like Memento. Maybe we should cover that next week, which we will. Spoiler. And so locations, and I think this is maybe the most important part of the analysis that I wanted to do on this, and why I watched it so many times, is he didn't have access to anything. For $6,000, pretty much all that is going to like feeding your crew and film. That's it. This guy had absolutely nothing. If you were to shoot it today, he would probably break his own love of film, and he is the biggest film honk in the entire world. But he would probably shoot this on like my Canon 60D. Like, he would just say, whatever. Now I can make, instead of a $6,000 movie, I can make, a $150 movie, and just buy food for everybody. And so, because all the locations are super simple, I would bet he didn't get permission from Dunkin' Donuts to shoot that shot at the beginning. He's shooting it from outside. We're not capturing any audio. It's just a guy sitting in a window. There's no reason you need to really, you see their logo, but this gets into contract law, which we'll touch on here in a second. But we're in Dunkin' Donuts, then we're all over the streets, then we're, intercutting with him in the apartment. And so the access that he has on the streets is such an easy way to scale up this universe, because he's not going to get access to some closed gated park, right? That's beautiful. Instead, he can go out and he can shoot these wide shots or these long lenses on the streets where and this changes from state to state and country to country, what the rules or laws are about shooting in public spaces. But generally speaking, you can probably shoot on streets as long as you're not featuring anybody in your shot. If you don't put a close-up on someone's face, then you're fine. If they're just one in a crowd, generally the rule is that's okay to use. And so knowing that, he's like, okay, so I have access to streets. What else do I have? I have a buddy. I don't know if this is true, but maybe he has a buddy who owns a coffee shop. Now he can film a scene in this coffee shop. Or it's not hard. Maybe he shot in, I know he said he used to shoot industrials, which is kind of a catch-all term. It doesn't mean you're shooting factories. It just is this catch-all term for corporate projects. Like you and I shoot industrials all the friggin' time. It's just how you pay the bills. And so maybe through shooting industrials, he got access to this coffee shop. I don't know. But he has access to maybe his own apartment, right? We have a shot, scenes in the writer's apartment, Bill. We have the apartment that they break into, the cheating girlfriend, so to speak, and the stairwells that probably go to all these apartments. He shoots on a rooftop. He shoots in a bar. He shoots in some apartment that is the blonde's apartment. And then there's like an abandoned apartment that could also probably be the writer's apartment just remodeled. Like they probably could have pulled all that stuff out, tore down the wallpaper, threw a dead bird in there, and now suddenly what was before the writer's room apartment building is now just an abandoned place that that Cobb has taken, the young guy. And then there's maybe an office. I don't really know what the room is with the detective. It could be anything. Maybe some office building. And so I think he probably said, here's what I have available. What can I write based on that? One of the problems of shooting in apartments is they're not very interesting. Shooting in an apartment is not inherently interesting. And you kind of need a really good reason to do that. Otherwise, you kind of want to be in more interesting spaces like a house or even, just fun spots. Like the bar itself is an interesting, fun location. There's life there. But I think he asked himself, how can we make apartments interesting? And I think if I had to bet, if I were to just, take a crack at unpacking why he made Following, I think he said, how can I make apartments interesting? What if they're being robbed by our protagonist? Because now we have stakes and tension in an otherwise dull setting. And I think he worked his way back from there. Okay, well, if it's about robbery and thievery, maybe it's about trust. Maybe I can make a thriller. Maybe I can style it in a noir in order to take advantage of all the cinematic cues that we discussed earlier. And so I would imagine he kind of backed his way in based on the locations that he'd had available, and said, how can I make it interesting and tense to be in an apartment? Well, robbing it, you're afraid of getting caught. And so there's just built-in tension around that. And so that's a great way to kind of start staging your story, because we don't really enter an apartment until we've established what this guy's MO is. And so I don't know. That's kind of my methodology whenever I start thinking about what do we have access to. I think Primer is another good case study of this. And my reco for when we get to the end of this show here in a few minutes will probably be another good case study. I'm not, whatever. I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Yeah.
Wow.
Todd, you.
I can't follow that. I can't follow that. I don't know. I think that I did notice the camera movement, and when I watched it, I didn't know that he shot it. I kind of assumed that he did just because it was his first film, and like I know that he knows his way around a camera. So I kind of watched it thinking he was filming it.
But you also know, because of our work together, that it can be really hard to direct and DP at the same time. And so I understand why you would be hesitant and not just assume full on that he would also be shooting it.
Yeah. It was just so intriguing that one of the things that you mentioned was, that I identified with was the, like how he revealed. You talked about how he revealed the big reveal at the end to us, and how he didn't just let the character, find out from Cobb, or let us find out, while we're watching it happen in real time. It's too late already.
Yeah.
She's already dead, and we're finding out with the main character, with him, with it being too late for him already as well, because all the evidence was planted. He's already in the police station. He's not going anywhere. He's going to be arrested. And so we're all finding out together, at the same time. Like, that is it's so brilliant for a first-time writer to do something like that, because it's so easy to just have the twist and just reveal the twist, in just a normal way. Think about it like you're writing the film, and you're, okay, I have this, and I want this to happen and that to happen, and this person says this and that. You're thinking of a million things. to also think, no, how I reveal it is very important. I want to reveal it this way, and be methodical about it, about that detail is unbelievable. So, we say on this podcast, like, that perfection is the enemy of good, right? Or the enemy of making anything, you could say. But at the same time, you do want to try to make it really great, to make it as perfect as you can. I think that the problem doesn't lie in the attempt at perfection. The problem lies in when you get caught up in the minute detail that doesn't matter. And knowing the difference between the two is the biggest thing. Knowing that the reveal is literally the most important thing in the film, you got to spend a lot of time getting that right, writing it the right way. That if you fail at 10 other things, don't fail at that,
Because it's so meticulous. It's so perfectly timed. As you're watching, you're listening. It's all just completely bound up seamlessly.
Yeah, it makes me feel like all of his other films almost.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I want to...
You can see the flashes in this,
Yes, I see Inception in
You
this.
see Inception. You see The Prestige. You see Memento. You see even, hints of Interstellar.
Right.
Like, it's all there. Even, sections of Batman. Like, his love of time and is all throughout. Started here. You could see his fascination from the beginning.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but on Bill's door is a Batman logo.
Yeah, so
I don't know if that was anything like what are the odds of that?
I wonder if there was part of it was just fascination with Batman, or that it was kind of a head nod to the Dark Detective. Like, that's kind of one of the original noirs, Batman, and so maybe it's just kind of this gentle, like, hey.
I just loved it because
That's so great.
It just was an interesting little thing that happened in that. So that's really interesting too. That opened my eyes a lot too when you said that of yes, you don't have to be perfect, but you should really fucking try.
Yeah.
Hard, especially when you're in a moment where it matters. Yeah.
No, I love that. And this is such, to me, last note, we'll move on, is an incredible feat, because I would never recommend someone make a low budget noir thriller. Like, that's practically suicide in filmmaking, because you need a budget. You need cool locations. You need so many more actors. You need dressy events. Like, noirs require so much more than what he gave. But the writing was there and the execution was there. It was just, it's clever. It's whenever I see, like, on the cover of the film, there's a quote from whoever that says, fiendishly clever. I can't, I'm saying whoever, it might be like Roger Ebert or something. I just can't read the type. But it called it fiendishly clever. And that's, to me, the reason why. Is because he did something so difficult with a really intelligent approach. Yeah.
It's all about story, man. And he's just the king of drawing you in to the detail of a story. Absolutely. and getting lost in it, where you don't necessarily see the cinematography or the acting or the actors, or remember that you're watching a movie because you're in the story. Because like this kind of style of film, not really into it. Not into black and white noir stuff. I like color films. I really do. Like, I'm not really into the whodunits kind of thing, I guess. I don't know. But like, there's so many other deeper aspects to the story. It's about people. It's not about necessarily burglary or whatever. And granted, there were aspects of it that were a little like not fully necessary. I don't know. I'm saying that wrong. I think that everything was kind of necessary, but they were just like not as important as others, but I didn't like Pablo Honey. I think it's the worst album to me. I think they think it's their worst album. Maybe not. I don't know. I know that they hate Creep.
Yeah.
But
Which is a shame.
But like it's necessary.
Mm.
It's it's necessary, and it's the bones, man. You can see the bones there of Memento. You can see the bones of Inception, and it just was beautifully executed on all fronts for sure, and super entertaining for a first film. Unreal.
$6 grand. $6 grand. Well done, sir.
Yeah, amazing.
So,
Gosh.
that said, I'm going to bring back my saturation and lower my contrast. I'm back to normal. What are you going to recommend this week?
Yes. So I want to recommend another first film of a great director that I love, that we all know and love, Quentin Tarantino, Reservoir Dogs from 1992. It's another amazing example of a film that has a very basic plot. I want to say one location. I can't remember.
I would say 3. There's a diner.
3. Oh yeah, because there's flashbacks.
There's an
and
office,
stuff.
and then there's the warehouse.
The warehouse, yeah. But to do so much now, he's not a very good example of don't show the violence.
Right.
He's in fact the antithesis of that.
Lean in.
But it's that is a good example of know the rules so that you can break the rules, right? Hitchcock wrote that rule, and he's like, okay, I wonder what it'd be like to break that rule over and over and over and over and over again, to where you don't even see it necessarily anymore, because that's just what this movie is. But focusing on the acting and the story, and leaving the locations not necessarily as a super important aspect of the film. One of my favorite Tarantino films by far. It's just fantastic. And it was 1992. Crazy.
That is crazy.
It's almost 30 years ago.
God.
Yeah.
Wild.
I know.
Yeah.
I was 12.
I'm glad you said that. We'll add that to the short list. It's really, really long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I would love to talk about that film.
Nice. I'm going to recommend another movie that's black and white by a well-known first-time filmmaker. It's called Pi. It's by Darren Aronofsky. It's a brutal movie to watch. Honestly, this is one that we're not going to cover just because I really don't enjoy watching this movie. But it is a testament.
Good reco.
Yeah, I know. I think it's hilarious and I thought about that. Like, I'm about to recommend something that I'm not going to watch. But if you've never seen it before, and you call yourself a film nerd, you should probably watch it just to kind of experience that. Because it'll get referenced quite a bit. I think his next film after Pi was Requiem for a Dream, which is a radical shift in story and style. And so, yeah, Pi, it's very inventive and original and experimental. It is the quintessential art house movie, as far as I'm concerned. And so check that out. We'll have both of those in the show notes so that you can check out the trailers. And so stay tuned for next week. I don't know why I'm talking like Barney Stinson all of a sudden. So stay tuned for next week. We're going to cover Christopher Nolan's follow-up, Memento, because I'm curious, what does it look like to go from a $6,000 movie to a $9 million movie? And what can we learn from that process? And so tune in for that. Don't forget, subscribe, review us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts, except for what's the SoundCloud? We're not on SoundCloud. And so leave us a note if you want us to talk about a thing. You can do that at this specific episode at thepestlepodcast.com/following.
And our quote of the day is from Roger Corman. One of the worst things you can do is have a limited budget and try to do some big looking film. That's when you end up with very bad work. Touché. I mean, know your limitations and work your strengths into those limitations. If your limitations are acting, maybe, you can't find good actors, maybe give them fewer lines. If your limitation is budget, then maybe make a short film in one location that you have access to all the time, your own apartment. I mean, we've talked about it here, ad nauseum. I mean, maybe not here, but at least personally, we've talked about how Always Sunny in Philadelphia started with a camcorder. They spent $3 on tapes for a camcorder, and they made one, 2-minute skit in their apartment. And that got them the deal with FX for Always Sunny, which is in, I think it's 15th season now.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Unbelievable. There is no excuse. You just find your strength and you adhere to those, and you don't try to do too much with something that you don't have. Very great quote.
Awesome. Roger Corman is kind of the OG filmmaker who he would pump out film after film. Like, I hesitate to say like 20 movies a year, but he made a lot, and there's filmmakers who got to start with him. James Cameron started by making like Piranha 2, I want to say, for Roger Corman. And I loved Piranha when I was a kid. I watched a lot of B movies, B horror. I watched a lot of horror movies. I watched Piranha. I loved Piranha 2. I think it might have just been called Piranhas. I don't know. But it was
aliens.
Yeah, it was flying fish. It was literally flying piranhas. And yeah, right, aliens. Sorry. Excuse my friend. He's a little slow.
I was like waiting for you to get it. Yeah.
And so, like, Roger Corman was this OG of just making it work, of just whatever it takes. Here's a script, go make it. And so I have a lot of respect for what he has to say, and even though a lot of his films aren't exactly standing the test of time, the industry has a great amount of respect and admiration to that man for what he was able to accomplish. And I love this idea, like, lean into exactly what you were saying, lean into your budget. Nolan didn't have $100,000, and so he didn't try to make an espionage thriller with CIA agents. Like, he was like, I'm going to make a noir thriller about two dudes who never met before, and they break into apartments. And they don't even break into that many. They break into 2. Maybe 3 if you include the guy letting him break into his own apartment. Like, they kept it as basic as, as he could. And so lean into what you have. Don't try to stretch it thin. And yeah, good writing. So, yeah, that's all I got. Love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I had a blast talking about this film. I absolutely loved it. I adored it. And it's an easy watch, I think.
Yeah.
It's not super long, so you can sit down and, have a cup of coffee or a beer or something, watch it, and you're done pretty quickly. And it holds you, the whole time. So yeah, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. Make sure to share, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. It means a lot. If you have a movie that you'd like us to cover, to chat about, to just give our opinions about it, please share. We'll cover it for sure. And join us next week. We're covering Memento, so make sure to go watch that. Until then, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch the movies.
Yeah.